Hello, everyone. My name is Samuel Han, and I'm the Aga Khan Foundation Research and Development Fellow at the University of Central Asia. In many ways, this has been an exciting, perhaps even unprecedented COP for Kyrgyzstan. During the opening days, we heard President Japarov call for global support towards a new collective quantitative target for combating climate change. COP29 also marks the first time that Kyrgyzstan is presenting a national pavilion, marking its initiative to be at the forefront of championing sustainable mountain development. And just recently, we saw the signing of the Baku joint ministerial statement by Kyrgyzstan and its partner economies in order to establish a dedicated trust fund for climate cooperation. And it is my firm belief that at the heart of these high-level discussions lies the importance of evidence-based research in order to guide these dialogues and inform effective policies. And today I have the tremendous honor of introducing three leading academics from the University of Central Asia, each of them bringing unique expertise to today's panel. Our speakers will share insights based on their work spanning the topics of Kyrgyzstan's progress on the SDGs 2030, glacier retreat and water security, and the gendered implications of climate change on mountain communities. So our first speaker for today is Dr. Gulnara Junishalieva. She's a postdoctoral fellow at the Institute of Public Policy and Administration, where she's engaged in research within the SDG Nexus network. Her research interests span entrepreneurship, community development, digitization, governance, and sustainability. Dr. Junishalieva was previously the founding director of the School of Professional and Continuing Education, UCA, and holds 25 years of professional experience in higher education. So without further ado, we'll get the program going. So let's give it up for Gulnara, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Samuel. Let me start. Esteemed colleagues, participants, and online attendees, it's a privilege to share our research findings at the COP29. Today, I will delve into our collaborative work with Ramona Tuber, examining the strategic landscape of the Kyrgyz Republic as it pertains to the advancement of the Sustainable Development Goals. The 2030 agenda is generally categorized into the three pillars of sustainability: environmental, social, and economic. Additionally, it's often framed around the 5 Ps: planet, people, prosperity, peace, and partnership. Today, my focus will particularly be on the environmental aspects, which includes essential SDGs, such as SDG 6, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. The selection of the Kyrgyz Republic as a case study for our research was motivated by its achievement of remarkable position in the SDG progress indexes. Despite being classified as a low-income country, in 2024, the Kyrgyz Republic secured the 48th position on the SDG Progress Index, surpassing 53 other LICs, including high-performing countries such as Vietnam, ranked 54th, Indonesia, 78th, and India, 109th. In regional context, the Kyrgyz Republic outperformed neighboring Central Asia countries, including Kazakhstan, ranked 66th, Uzbekistan, 81st, Tajikistan, 98th, and Turkmenistan, 94th. This underscores the exceptional development trajectory of the Kyrgyz Republic and highlights its potential as a case study to provide valuable insights for advancing sustainable development goals in a similar context. The SDG are a set of specific and measurable goals that can be effectively implemented and monitored if decision makers have access to the necessary data and analytical tools. The success of the SDG relies heavily on the accurate measurement of impacts of action taken by the decision makers and the collection of data. Initially, it was unclear how to measure attainment, but multiple methodologies are now available for the Asia region. Various methodologies are provided by the bodies such as Sustainable Development Solution Network, and here you could observe the Sustainable Development Report for 2024. Also the OECD, the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, SDG Tracker, and many others. The Sustainable Development Reports dashboard and trends for 2024 indicate that SDG 15, which focus on terrestrial ecosystem, is facing major challenges and stagnating trends. Similarly, SDG 6, water and sanitation, SDG 12, sustainable consumption and production are also experiencing stagnating trends and significant challenges. In contrast, SDG 11, sustainable cities, and SDG 13, climate action, are on track to be achieved by 2030. It's important to note that due to the Kyrgyz Republic being landlocked, SDG 14 is not applicable. The graph illustrates the progress of SDG indices related to the specific environmental goals over the past 2 decades. While the indices for the SDG 12 and 13 have shown relatively high values throughout this period, and the observed progress can largely be attributed to the improvements in the SDG 11 index. How can we address the stagnation seen in specific goals such as SDG 6 and 15? To implement the SDG, it's expected that they will be prioritized in the country development strategies. In our research, we analyzed national long-term policy docs. The strategic documents were extracted from the centralized data bank of legal information maintained by the Ministry of Justice. To ensure transparency and reproducibility, we followed the PRISMA guidelines. We identified the 486 documents using the inclusion criteria based on the document type and applied filters to exclude the 323 documents. After the screening, we removed another 55 outdated policy documents. Consequently, 108 documents remain in our data set for analysis. Through understanding of the metrics to be assessed, the methodology used, and the organization responsible for measuring progress are essential to achieving the targets. The global indicators framework, the GIF here, hierarchical structure has become less distinct on the data collection level. Theoretically, indicators should be aggregated into the targets, and targets should be aggregated into the goals. However, in the SDR, Sustainable Development Reports methodology, all available indicators and targets are normalized and aggregated at the goal level. On the national level, we observe only raw data maintained by the National Statistical Committee. Additionally, we don't differentiate between the global, you can see this in blue, and national levels of indicators indicated in orange. As UN interagency and expert group permits supplementing the global indicators framework with indicators at regional and national level. We also indicate in green that the data sources are being explored, and in light blue, indicators that are not applicable for the Kyrgyz Republic. We use the SDG mapper which employs the NLP techniques to identify the SDG mentioned in strategic documents. The mapping data reveals that there is a significant emphasis on SDG 1, 8, and 16. However, SDG 6, 12, and 13 received very little attention for the period 2015-2022. While the situation has improved for the period 2040, this is still limited focus on environmental goals in strategic documents. Upon a detailed examination of the documents only for 2023-2040 period, we observed that the 5 environmental goals collectively represents approximately 14% of the 5,700 identified SDG-related keywords. In a figure, these goals are categorized under the planet dimension. Further, we have focused only on 24 strategic documents, highlighting environmental indicators related to the SDG. This includes the National Development Program, covering the period until 2026 and its implementation plan, the National Development Strategy until 2040, and the Green Economy Program, among others. The most notable indicators on the map are yellow bubble, 7.3 energy productivity and efficiency, 7.2 renewable and green efficient energy. We can observe which indicators are included in the documents and which are not. For example, we observe that SDG 13, a dark green bubble, that addresses the climate change, decarbonization, the Paris Agreement, and climate investment. In order to identify gaps in achieving the SDG, we compared the country's current level of progress with its long-term country priorities outlined in 4 strategic documents, including Constitution. The SDG index, the purple line, reflects the country's progress towards achieving the SDG. As we can see, the national strategies are required to overcome these SDGs, where the country must overcome significant gaps presented in plain, highlighted in orange. We also included the SDG dashboard and trends legend on the x-axis to highlight the SDGs that require particular attention in a country and should be prioritized accordingly. For example, here we observe SDG 15, and we see that there is a big gap, but still not enough documents covering these goals. At the recent 78th UN General Assembly, the President Japarov underscored the Kyrgyzstan commitment to sustainable development, proposing a specific initiative titled 5 Years Action for the Development of UNDP Mountain Region. This reflects our dedication to ensuring the sustainable development of mountains region, vital for our community and country perspectives. The analysis compares the trends between the Sustainable Development Report 2024 and the National Statistical Committee. The database utilizes significantly more indicators, 171 for NSC compared to the 92 for SDR. This allows for a more detailed and localized assessment of SDG progress. The National Statistical Committee data provide a nuanced perspective by categorizing trends into positive and negative outcomes. For example, SDG 15 shows 9 positive and 3 negative trends, with an overall assessment indicating moderate improvement. I would like to draw attention to the conflict trends that are observed in the SDG 6, 12, and 15. It's critical to have a clear understanding of the methodology used to assess SDG achievement. as this enables the identification of key areas for improvement. Additionally, discrepancies between the national and global data source raise concerns. If decision makers aspire to position the Kyrgyz Republic among the top 30 countries in SDG achievement by 2030, it's essential to prioritize the use of a sustainable development report data to guide decision-making. However, according with the voluntary national report, all decisions by ministries and state bodies currently rely on national data collected by the National Statistical Committee based on the UN metadata. Our primary finding is the identification of conflict between the trends reported in the National Statistical Committee and SDR data. The primary challenge at hand is the harmonization of divergent methodologies and data source to facilitate effective decision-making. In the present study, we explore the importance of understanding the origins of data to enable SDG achievement. The case study of the Kyrgyz Republic shows that to achieve the SDG, decision must be based on the clear understanding not only on the national context data, but also the global assessment that decision makers need to be aware of. According to the Allen et al., national policies targeting SDG priorities can lead to significant progress even in resource-constrained settings. In conclusion, the Kyrgyz Republic is committed to achieving the 2030 agenda. We are determined to make meaningful progress towards achieving the SDG through concerted efforts, strategic partnership, and unwavering focus on our unique environmental context. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Gulnara, for that presentation. Excellent overview to try and understand the landscape of progress towards SDGs in the Kyrgyz Republic. So we'll move on to our next speaker. Our second speaker is Dr. Sanjar Sadarov. He's a research fellow at the University of Central Asia's Mountain Societies Research Institute. He holds a PhD in engineering from Kyoto University in Japan. And over the past decade, his research endeavors have been dedicated to exploring various aspects of the Earth. His current area of expertise is in the assessment of glaciers and water resources in mountainous regions, and his emphasis is on the potential ramifications of climate change on these vital water resources. So whenever you're ready, that's a lovely backdrop of a photo. Can't wait for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Can I start?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So my name is Sanjar. I'm a research fellow at the University of Central Asia, and as a continuation of our previous speaker, I would like to give a talk about the critical issue that is not only affecting the natural beauty of Kyrgyzstan, as you can see in this photo, but also the very foundation of its sustainable development, the challenge of glacier retreat and the assessment of its contribution to the water systems in the region that are directly related to the SDGs about the water. So Kyrgyzstan is often referred as the water tower of the Central Asia due to its abundant water, freshwater resources, primarily fed by the snow and glacier melt. And with over 8,000 glaciers covering approximately 4% of the nation's total land area, Kyrgyzstan glacier-fed rivers and lakes have historically provided a reliable and plentiful supply of water to support communities, agriculture, and industries in the downstream areas as well. Because Kyrgyzstan is located, it's a mountainous country, it's located on the upstream area, especially regarding the Central Asian region. So this wealth of water resources has been a key factor in Kyrgyzstan growth and prosperity, enabling the country to develop a robust hydropower sector that generates over 90% of its electricity. So here you can see the overall spread of the glaciers in the country, and which supplies the water to one of the most crucial water systems, Sirdarya, that supplies also water for hydropower production and so on. So glaciers play a vital role in regulating the country's water resources, which are essential for agriculture, hydropower, and the daily lives of millions of people in Kyrgyzstan and Central Asia. And this challenge of glacier retreat and water security is directly linked to the sustainable development goals, such as the clean water and sanitation, climate action, and life on land. But not only these sustainable development goals, but you can say that it's a foundation of the other goals as well, such as related to the food, health, industries, economy, and so on. And here you can see that glaciers, they are usually located in the high mountains, and they can be in a various shape. Here you can see the largest lake in largest glacier in Kyrgyzstan, Inilchik Glacier. It's a wally-shaped glacier, and on top you can see the Grigoriev ice cap. So it's a glacier located just on the top of the mountain. So you can see the variety of the glacier shapes and in the area and mass as well. But due to the climate change, we have a certain glacier degradation in the Central Asia over the past half century. And here on the left-hand figure, you can see not only the glaciers in Kyrgyzstan, but overall across the Central Asia. You can see how it's melting, the changes in the relative area of the glaciers. And it's estimated that overall decrease in total glacier area was about 20%. And for the mass, it was about 30% over the past 50 years. And according to the global climate models, if the increasing temperature trends continues, we will probably lose most of the glaciers by the end of this century. And here on this graph, you can see the retreat of the glacier Petrov located in Kyrgyzstan. And here you can see the various delineations according to the respective years. And sometimes when the glacier retreats, they leave a so-called glacier lake with the potential of the outburst, which will cause the flooding for the downstream areas. So this is also related to the disasters, potential disasters in that area. So what are the key drivers behind this alarming glacier retreats? The primary factors are rising temperatures, changes in precipitation patterns, and the broader impacts of the human-induced climate change. As global temperature continues to rise and weather patterns become more erratic, glaciers are feeling the strain, melting at an unprecedented rate. So especially in Central Asia, the mismanagement of water resources has already led to severe anthropogenic disasters, such as the disappearance of the Aral Sea, formerly the fourth largest lake in the world. Nowadays, it's almost disappeared. So the region's complex web of transboundary water systems have made effective water resource management an ongoing challenge. And the additional pressure of the glacier retreat due to the climate change only exacerbates these existing water management issues. So complex assessment of the water resources, especially evaluation of the glacier contribution to the water system, is crucial for the region. So in Central Asia, we have upstream countries such as Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan supplying water from the snow and glacier melt to the downstream, more agricultural developed countries such as Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. So this pattern may be shifted in the future due to the climate change. And the determination of the sources of runoff from receding glaciers is a critical component in developing effective mitigation and adaptation strategies to address the impacts of climate change on the country's water resources. So understanding the intricate balance in the hydrological linkages between the glacier systems and the downstream water supply is essential for informed decision-making and targeted interventions. So we have to know how much water comes from the glaciers and what will be the impact of the climate change and possible consequences to the water systems in that region. And one of the most challenging and crucial parts of this assessment is the actual obtaining of the glacier data, because glaciers usually located above 3,000 or 4,000 meters. These areas are relatively hard to access, And if you want to obtain the data from the glacier, you have to go there. Sometimes you have to bring your equipment to measure various meteorological inputs and install that automatic weather stations on the glacier. Here you can see the installed weather station on the Bordu Glacier, located above 4,000 meters. It measures not only the temperature, but also wind speed, short wave, long wave radiation, which plays a crucial role in the assessment of the water balance. And sometimes you have to, because it's relatively expensive to bring all the equipment with the helicopter, you have to bring it by horses. And I would like to express my gratitude to the local researchers that sometimes risk their lives in order to accomplish this crucial work. And sometimes in order to install that meteor stations, you have to bury actual ice with this so-called hot vapor drilling machine. And because the ice is flowing, you have to also maintain that metal stick on the glacier. And without local researchers that goes to the glaciers every season, it's not possible to obtain this crucial meteorological data. And by utilizing this in situ meteorological data, it's possible to precisely model the melting rates from these glaciers. And this has allowed for the development of the physics-based models that can more accurately simulate the complex interactions between the glaciers, local climate, and the resulting runoff patterns. So as I previously said, we can measure also the incoming solar radiation. And here you can see the correction values of this solar radiation obtained from the reanalysis data. And you can see that the correction of the solar radiation led to more accurate glacier melting simulations throughout the season. So on this graph, you can see the glacier melt observations and simulations for 2013 and 2014 seasons. Here, black line represents the observed values of the glacier melt. The red and blue are the values of the simulated glacier melt. And here you can see that if we use uncorrected ERA 5 reanalysis data, it actually overestimates the glacier melt. And if we correct that solar radiation, a crucial component in the energy balance, you can see how that actual simulated results are improved. So by using this coupling the models, the glacier model and the hydrological model, we tested the overall contribution of the glaciers in the three river basins located in the Isykyl Basin. It's in Kyrgyzstan. And you can see here that water is formed in the form of ice and snow that supplies water to the downstream areas that agriculture developed. And we tried to measure the actual water in the river. It's called the discharge. Here you can see the observed values and modeled values of the Kızılsu River. And the results pretty much. And by using also the glaciological component, we have been able to estimate the relative contribution of the glacier melt to the overall water system. And you can see that for example, for Kızılsu River Basin, that is approximately over 10% glaciated. The actual glacier contribution can reach 20% in annual, and about half of the water comes from the glacier during the summertime, especially in July and August. So water contribution of glaciers varies depending on the area of glaciation and local precipitation patterns. However, as the climate change continues to accelerate the retreat of these ice masses, the seasonal pattern of glacier melt and runoff are being disrupted, and the timing and volume of glacier melting discharge is shifting, with peak flows occurring earlier in the year and decreasing contribution during the peak agriculture domestic consumption periods, which were when like usually in July and August. And this disruption to the historically reliable glacier-fed water cycle poses significant challenges for managing water allocation and meeting the growing demands of Kyrgyzstan communities, farms, and industries. So in conclusion, I'd like to say that the challenge of glacier retreat and its impact on water security in Kyrgyzstan is a pressing and multifaceted issue that lies at the heart of the country's sustainable development, and precise determination of glacier runoff source and the development of advanced hydrological models will be crucial in enabling Kyrgyzstan to navigate the complex issue. And the time to act is now. By addressing the challenge of glacier retreat and water security, Kyrgyzstan can not only protect its vital natural resources, but also demonstrate to the world the power of sustainable development in the face of the changing climate. Yeah, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Sanjar, for the presentation. Lots of great visuals to get a sense of the geographical context that Kyrgyzstan is in. And we'll potentially come back to that at the end to try and dig a little bit deeper into how those factors play out. But last but not least, we have our third speaker. We have Dr. Azamat Azarov, who is a research fellow also at the Mountain Society's Research Institute at the University of Central Asia. He received his PhD in Sustainable Rural Development from the Czech University of Life Sciences in Prague. His research interests include rural development and sustainable agriculture, with a particular focus on the intersection of food systems, security, and climate change. And through his work, Dr. Azarov aims to improve agricultural practices and also foster sustainable development in Central Asia's mountainous regions. So last but not least, Azamat, the floor is yours whenever you're ready.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you see my presentation?
Yep.
Thank you very much, Samuel. So, good afternoon, dear participants. Today I will discuss the gendered vulnerabilities to climate change in high mountain regions, drawing insights from studies conducted in Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. So first of all, I would like to say that this research is a part of the Civil Society Initiative Unit of the University of Central Asia, which focuses on the understanding how men and women perceive climate change in rural mountainous regions. These areas are highly vulnerable to climate change, and there is a little research on the gender differences and how its impacts are perceived, particularly in Central Asia. So our study aims to address this gap by focusing on women's unique challenges and adaptive strategies. So this is the general information about Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan is the landlocked mountainous country in middle of Central Asia. More than 90% of arable of country's territory are mountains, and 60% of total population live in rural areas and mostly in mountainous areas. So according to the recent World Bank data, Kyrgyzstan experienced a temperature increase or rise, resulting in shorter winters, early snow melt, and more frequent heat waves. So projections for 2050 suggest that further warming is expecting. There will be increased erratic precipitation patterns, which heighten the risks of droughts and mudslides and other hazardous events. which challenges the agricultural system and rural livelihoods. So let me start with the research that we conducted in Kyrgyzstan. So our research examined 9 villages along the Naren River, located in central part of the Kyrgyzstan, so in central Tian Mountains. We selected almost 300 respondents, equally divided between men and women, which participated in the study and were answering questions about changes in temperature, precipitation, natural disaster, and its impact on their livelihoods. Data were analyzed using the Pearson chi-square test in order to find the significant difference between answers of female and male respondents. So the next slide shows an overview, gender profile, and education of the respondents. So the distribution age is fairly balanced between men and women, which providing reliable sample for the gender comparison. Most respondents are middle age, between 36 and 55 years old. On the right side, you can see the educational background. Most respondents have general secondary education, but there is a notable difference that more women had higher education. So here's the results regarding the perception of temperature change in recent years. And this slide summarized the perception of temperature. This analysis found no difference between the responses of men and women. Both men and women observed seasonal temperature changes, particularly warmer air temperature in winter and summer. So which aligns actually with the broader climate trends in Central Asian region. So the next slide shows the perceptions of respondents regarding the precipitation. Again, the data shows no significant difference between female and male respondents. Both men and women consistently reported less precipitation across all seasons. So a common observation among respondents is reduction of snow cover with snow melting early in spring, even in high mountain areas. So combined with less summer rainfall, this led to reduced soil moisture, which significantly affects the vegetation in pastures and croplands. So we also ask regarding the natural disasters. You can see this slide summarizes the precipitation of natural disasters in study area. So overall, the area is relatively stable, with no significant population exposed to frequent hazard events. In most cases, there were no significant differences in responses between female and male respondents. So, however, there is a notable difference regarding drought, where the men, a significant number of men reported heat wave and drought in the region. But however, this event formally was not classified as natural disaster by Ministry of Emergency Situation of Kyrgyzstan. So this is the slide which illustrates the impact of climate change. So all these changes on the livelihoods and on households activities of the respondents. So drinking water availability has decreased primarily during the drying up of springs, also leading to water shortages and poor quality drinking water. So these issues, particularly poor water quality, were linked to rare stomach problems by children. In terms of health, women reported a higher prevalence of allergic diseases, which may be connected with changing environmental conditions. So energy use also shows a clear gender difference, with 30% of women identifying it is a climate-related concern compared to negligible number of men. For example, sudden cold snaps in spring following warmer periods often increase household workloads and costs. So because families actually must purchase extra coal or wood for heating. However, some women observe positive changes, such as reduced heating needs in recent years, allowing them to save fuels like coal or dung and lower electricity bill. So additionally, climate change has increased in household tasks due to natural hazards like mudslides. In one village particularly, a resident described extra work such as cleaning debris from backyards and kitchen gardens. So the next slide shows the impact of climate change on agricultural production. So significant gender differences were observed by men answers. Men predominantly reported declines due to high temperature, heat waves during the summer. So the crop yields were declined during the recent years, according to most of the men. So men were more active in answering this question. Also, the kitchen gardens showed a significant difference between men and women. So women's active involvement in managing kitchen garden likely contribute to nuanced perspectives. Regarding the pasture productivity, can be also observed a significant difference between answers of female and male respondents. Both genders highlighted declining pasture conditions, citing low and less precipitation in this area. But also increased grazing pressure, because most of the respondents were also linking that with increased number of livestock on pastures. So interestingly, in terms of arable land yields and pasture productivity, women responses were more varied, and many references to their spouses when they're discussing pasture and crop yields related issues. So irrigation increased according to men. So the frequency of irrigation increased also, and men were more actively responded to that and gave more detailed insights regarding that. So, and the next slide shows the coping measures, so adaptive measures that implied or implemented by female and male respondents. So in general, there was no significant difference between men's and women's responses regarding action taken to prevent negative impacts of climate change on their livelihoods. So with almost half of both groups reporting that they had not taken any actions. So however, So a detailed observation of the answers of the respondents revealed that all men who implemented some measures to improve or improve the agricultural production or who implemented the measures, they were focused on improving agricultural production. For example, increasing the use of fertilizer, switching to more productive crops, while women focused on diversifying family income with income from sewing workshops, opening small shops, were very often mentioned by women. So the next question, we also asked about the income sources, the importance of different income sources. So livestock and crop cultivation were the most important income source for both genders. But interestingly, women place higher value on public employment and pensions, maybe because they have direct access to these financial sources, and also maybe link that with higher education, so they're employed in public institutions. And we also asked about the migration, whether climate change induced the migration, external or internal. So results show that 25% of respondents have at least one member who engaged in migration. Internal and external migration equally split. But the main answer is that the climate change is not primarily drive the migration in study area. So in conclusions, rural residents observe noticeable climate changes. Agricultural impacts are present, but not alarming yet. Most respondents have not implemented strategies to mitigate these effects. There is a clear gender divide in strategies. Men focus on agricultural solution, while women try to diversify family income through off-farm activities. So land tenure, as a recommendation, land tenure is predominantly controlled by men, limiting women's access to productive resources and decision-making. Land reforms policies that promote joint ownership or prioritize women's land right can empower women to contribute more effectively to agricultural and climate adaptation efforts. So supporting women's entrepreneurial efforts, access to financial can strengthen households' resilience. So I have no time to present, sorry, the research in Tajikistan. Really sorry for that. Thank you for your attention. So I think I have no time, right, Samuel?
Yep, I think we can put a wrap there. Thanks so much, Azerbaijan. Obviously, I know there's so much more data and so much more details you could go into, but for the sake of today's presentation, I think that was a good ending to it. So thank you for presenting. And we have a couple minutes to address some general questions that we've collected through the audience. And let me just take a look here. Okay, so yeah, we'll get started with the Q&A. And the first question we have for all three of you generally is that since, you know, we are based at the University of Central Asia, an educational institution, the question is, what might be the role of higher education in the context of Kyrgyzstan towards advancing sustainable development goals? Anyone, all three of you, feel free to chime in.
Can I start?
Yeah, absolutely. Please go ahead.
Under the Sustainable Development Goals, there is a specific indicators which actually universities should accomplish. These indicators, for example, SDG 9.5 world ranking, which shows the impact of universities in the world. We also have the indicator 9.5.2, which is the researchers per million of inhabitants in a country. And for now, the Kyrgyz Republic has a little bit over the 600 researchers per million. And the green threshold for the Kyrgyz Republic is 850. Another indicator is SDG 9.5.1. This is articles published in the Scopus indexed journals. In 2023, Kyrgyzstan published more than 700 articles, but the target is much higher. So each of us making the contribution to achieving the SDG. Thank you.
Thank you, Gulnara. Any comments from Sanjar Razama? If not, we'll go on to a different question.
Yeah, I only want to add that we have to increase the awareness of these possible consequences of the climate change regarding the ecosystems, and through the education system, we can develop the let's say new specialists that will assess this kind of changes in the future.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Thank you, Sanjar. So next question we have is, perhaps this is something that y'all could go into a little more unpacking. What are some more ways that Kyrgyzstan can collaborate with other Central Asian countries on some of these goals? Perhaps drawing from your research work that have applicable insights from other broader mountain societies. What are some ways that collaboration regionally could happen? Maybe for this question, since Tajikistan, just geographically, it's very much proximal to Kyrgyzstan and has a lot of similarities, perhaps. Yeah, would either of you perhaps discuss a little more about how Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan could have similar insights or work together towards advancing these progress?
Yeah, yes, and I would like to answer that question or comment. Unfortunately, I was not able to present the results of our Tajik study, but the overall climatic condition, economic condition, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan are quite similar. So both countries are mountainous countries and have very similar challenges, and especially regarding the climate change. So in that regard, so collaborative research or actions can be done, and specifically regarding the sustainable development goals, we can work with organizations like FAO, WFP, and these organizations mostly require the scientific background for that. In that term, we can work more collaboratively, where we can inform, we can research, and this organization can implement.
Thank you, Asamat. Yeah, absolutely agree.
Sustainable development goals.
Oh, sorry. Was there anything else to add from the panel? Okay, great.
I see some questions.
Okay, yeah, actually, please. I'm actually having slight difficulty seeing the questions from here. Might need some technical support. If the panelists, if you're able to see the questions, please feel free to select one.
Yeah, I got a question. I think it's for me about from Asif. What is the effect of precipitation on glacial retreat in Kyrgyzstan? So yeah, thank you for the question. And according to the recent studies in Kyrgyzstan and probably in Tajikistan as well, we observe relative increase in precipitation, and that increase supply additional snow for glaciers to grow, but this amount is small compared to the melting rates of the glacier, which shift the balance towards the gradual degradation. So even if you have increased precipitation, the melting rates are like large as well. So the balance is shifted towards the gradual melting. Yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Great, thank you, Sanjar. Are there any other questions?
And, yeah,
that
I
popped
can
up?
also just add to answer to that answer some comments. Yeah. The precipitation projection for Central Asia shows that in the future there will be higher temperature and more rainfall, and the snowfall will decrease. So which also actually affects the agricultural production in both countries. So snow melt will decreasing, or I mean the snow cover and glacier cover will be decreasing, and rainfall will be increasing. So which will also affect the irrigation pattern in Central Asia. So the more rainfall precipitation is less predictable and less manageable in comparison to snow melt. So I hope that was clear and answered that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for chiming in. So that brings us just close to the hour mark. And if any of our panelists have any last comments, please feel free to share. Otherwise, we'll close the session. Thank you, everybody, for joining wherever you are remotely, both in Baku and abroad. So really honored to be able to invite 3 of our speakers from University of Central Asia to discuss sustainable development goals in the context of COP and everything that's been happening. So thank you, all 3 of you. Thank you, audience, and wish you all the best. We'll close it here.